The wind howled through the narrow alley between towering buildings as rain came down in cold, slanted sheets. Samantha Blake stood under the dim glow of a flickering hallway light outside her high-rise apartment, clutching her designer tote and shivering despite her tailored trench coat. Her soaked heels tapped anxiously against the marble floor as she tried her door again. Locked, no response from inside. And her phone, of course, had died 10 minutes ago during a conference call. She had been in meetings since dawn, closed $1 million deal by noon, and now couldn't even get into her own home. She cursed softly under her breath, brushing wet hair from her face. She remembered the spare key left with her assistant, who was likely asleep by now. Everyone assumed Samantha Blake had it all figured out. CEO of one of the fastest growing tech companies on the East Coast, regularly featured in business magazines, invited to elite panels and Forbes events, but in this moment, she was just a woman stranded in the rain, cold and tired, without a soul to call nearby. She pulled her coat tighter and leaned her head against the door, blinking away frustration. For the first time in a long time, she felt something unfamiliar: helplessness. A soft squeak of stroller wheels echoed in the hallway behind her. She turned, startled. A man was pushing a small stroller with a sleeping toddler tucked beneath a fuzzy pink blanket. The man, in a gray hoodie and jeans, looked slightly surprised to see her standing there. He was probably in his early 40s, unshaven but clean, with kind eyes and a cautious smile. "Are you okay?" he asked gently, stopping a few feet away. She hesitated. Normally, she wouldn't speak to strangers in her building, especially this late. But something about his voice was warm, reassuring, not nosy, not patronizing, just genuine. "Locked out," she admitted with a half laugh. "Phone's dead. No spare key. Just perfect." He nodded, glancing at the rain still trickling down the hallway windows. "I live just 2 floors down. You're welcome to wait inside till someone gets here, if you'd like." Samantha blinked. In her world, offers like that came with motives, but this man didn't seem to expect anything, just a neighbor offering shelter to another human being. And somehow, that made it harder to refuse. Daniel's apartment was modest, small, tidy, and filled with quiet warmth. A pair of baby shoes sat by the door, and soft toys were scattered near the couch. The faint smell of chamomile tea mixed with something faintly sweet, maybe cinnamon or oatmeal. Samantha stepped inside, feeling oddly out of place in her expensive clothes, her wet coat clinging to her like a reminder of how out of touch her life had become with anything ordinary. Daniel motioned toward the couch. "You can sit there, let me grab you a towel and some tea. Lily's asleep, so we'll keep things quiet." She nodded, taking a careful seat on the edge of the worn but clean sofa. A faded photo of a young woman holding a baby sat on a nearby shelf. It looked like it had been dusted just that morning. He returned with a towel and a steaming mug, offering them with a quiet smile. "It's just herbal, good for stress." She accepted both, wrapping the towel around her shoulders and letting the tea warm her hands. "Thank you," she said softly. "No problem. Been locked out a few times myself." He sat across from her in an armchair, keeping a respectful distance. "I'm Daniel, that little one's Lily." Samantha nodded. "I'm Sam," she said, shortening her name automatically, without the usual introduction that followed: CEO, founder, tech innovator. Tonight, she didn't want to be any of those things. He glanced toward the stroller, making sure Lily was still asleep, then leaned back. "You live up on the 22nd floor, right? I think I've seen you a few times in the elevator." "Probably," she replied. "I'm not home much." He chuckled quietly. "Same. Between daycare and work, life's a blur. What do you do?" she asked, more out of politeness than curiosity until his answer caught her attention. "Used to be in it, left the field a couple years back after my wife passed, needed to be home for Lily. Now I work part-time at a grocery store and pick up tech gigs when I can." The simplicity in his tone hit her unexpectedly hard. No bitterness, no celebrity, just reality, spoken by a man who had clearly weathered storms. She stared into her tea. Her world revolved around growth charts, investor meetings, and app launches. His revolved around bedtime stories and survival. And for the first time in a long while, she wondered if she'd been missing the point. The minutes passed with an easy stillness, interrupted only by the occasional sigh from the sleeping toddler. The storm outside had quieted into a steady drizzle, but neither Samantha nor Daniel seemed eager to move. There was something oddly comforting about the soft hum of the old heater, and the way the lamp cast a warm glow over the room. Daniel stood up to check on Lily, gently adjusting the blanket on her tiny form, then walked into the kitchen. You hungry? He called softly. I made some vegetable soup earlier. There's plenty left. Samantha hesitated. She hadn't eaten since breakfast, her usual routine of skipping meals to power through meetings. Her assistant had offered lunch, but she'd waved it off. Now her stomach answered for her. Sure, thank you, she said, standing up and walking slowly toward the kitchen. They sat across from each other at the small table, two steaming bowls between them. The soup was simple but delicious, and the warmth of it seemed to settle something deeper inside her. She found herself asking questions, not the kind she was used to in boardrooms, but the kind that made people open up, and Daniel did. He told her about how he met his wife in college, how they built a life together with plans that didn't include tragedy. When his wife got sick, everything changed. He left his high-paying tech job to be there through every treatment, every setback. After she passed, he didn't have the heart to go back to coding. The deadlines, the pressure, the coldness of it all, it just didn't matter anymore. Not when he had a little girl depending on him for everything. Samantha listened. Truly listened, in a way she hadn't with anyone in years. No one was trying to impress anyone. There was no pretense. Just two people sharing a table and the truth. She began to talk too, not about her company or her latest product launch, but about how tired she felt. How success didn't stop the loneliness. How sometimes, at night, she stared out at the city lights and felt completely disconnected from it all. Daniel didn't judge. He just nodded, refilled her soup, and offered a quiet, understanding smile. In that tiny kitchen, something shifted. The CEO and the single dad strangers hours ago shared something more than soup. They shared the unspoken bond of two people who knew what it meant to carry heavy things alone. By the time the sky outside began to lighten with the earliest traces of dawn, Samantha realized she hadn't felt this at peace in years. The quiet of Daniel's apartment, the gentle rhythm of his voice, even the occasional soft snore from Lily Olivet felt like a different world from the one she usually inhabited. There were no urgent emails, no performance graphs, no ringing phones, just stillness, and the calm that came from being around someone who didn't expect anything from her. Her phone buzzed faintly on the table, now charged just enough to come back to life. She glanced at the screen over a dozen missed calls and messages. Her assistant was downstairs with the spare key. The real world was knocking again. She stood slowly, almost reluctantly. That's me, she said, offering Daniel a quiet smile. Looks like I'll finally get back into my apartment. Daniel nodded, standing as well. Glad I could help. Hope the rest of your day treats you better. She looked at him for a moment, studying the man who had offered her kindness without hesitation. No small talk, no networking angle, just a decent human being doing something decent. That kind of thing was rare in her world. I really mean it, she said sincerely. Thank you for everything. It's nothing, he said with a shrug. I just did what anyone should do. She walked toward the door, then paused. Not everyone would have. Most would have just kept walking. He offered her that same calm smile. Well, then I guess the world needs more people who don't. Samantha nodded, her throat tight, and stepped out into the hallway. By the time Daniel closed the door behind her, he didn't give the night much more thought. To him, it was just a strange coincidence. A soaked neighbor, a warm meal, a late-night conversation, nothing more. But later that afternoon, as Lily napped and he opened his laptop to check emails, he noticed one from a company he had never applied to. It was a job offer, remote, flexible, with a generous salary. The role was made for someone like him. Confused, he scrolled down to the signature. Samantha Blake, CEO. He stared at the screen in disbelief, heart racing. The woman he had fed soup and lent a towel to wasn't just some locked-out neighbor. She was one of the most influential tech leaders in the country, and she hadn't just remembered his kindness. She'd done something about it. 1 year later, the summer sun cast golden light over the Blake Technologies family picnic held in a quiet park just outside the city. The company had grown, but its atmosphere had shifted, less rigid, more human. Employees brought their families, shared meals at long tables, and children laughed as they chased bubbles across the lawn. It wasn't the kind of event Samantha Blake used to attend, but now, she not only attended, she helped organize it. Near the play area, Daniel sat on a blanket with Lily in his lap, watching her giggle as she munched on a popsicle. He wore a company t-shirt like everyone else, but there was something different in his posture. No relaxed, confident, present. In the past year, he'd returned to tech full-time, working remotely as a senior engineer. He no longer worried about rent or daycare or how to make ends meet. And more than anything, he had time to be the father he wanted to be. Samantha walked over-carrying a bottle of water, dressed casually in jeans and a light blouse. Her hair was pulled back, her heels replaced by sneakers. A few people still did double takes when they saw her like this, so far removed from the sharp-edged executive they once knew. But those who'd worked closely with her over the past year knew something had changed. She had changed. Lily ran to her with open arms, wrapping around her legs with a squeal. "Aunt Sammy," Samantha laughed and scooped her up, twirling her once before settling her onto her hip. Daniel stood and smiled, the moment between them quiet but full. "You didn't have to invite us," he said softly, watching Lily show Samantha a flower she had picked. "I wanted to," she replied, her eyes kind. "You were there when I needed someone, even when you didn't know who I was. You reminded me what it means to just be human." Daniel nodded, emotion flickering in his eyes. "That night changed more than I expected." "It changed me too," she said. "Sometimes we forget how powerful one small act of kindness can be, until someone reminds us." As children played and laughter rose into the summer air, the three of them stood there, no titles, no labels, just people, bound together by one rainy night and a simple choice to help a stranger. And in that moment, the world felt just a little softer, a little brighter, and full of quiet hope.